Welcome back to Analytical Strategy. Today we are talking about the top 10 worst told lies in Survivor history. Now when I say a worst told lie, I don't mean morally or ethically or anything like that. I mean lies that were so obviously not true from the outset, the contestants were generally able to figure this out and use it to their advantage in the game. This may include lies about their past, lies about advantages in the game, or just really poor acting performances overall. So without further ado, let's get into it and delve into some of these really obvious fibs in Survivor history. So coming in at 10th position is Val Collins from Survivor Salman and her lie about obtaining 2 idols. So Val was put in a really difficult position straight off the bat, having to compete against her husband Jeremy in a pretty physical challenge and the loser requiring to go to Exile Island. So out of the gate, Val was separated from her tribe in a game of social interactions. So it really was a difficult position for her to be in from the get-go. She was able to skate through the first tribal, but as she found it difficult to find the cracks within her tribe, she devised a plan to state she had not 1 but 2 idols, one found on Exile and one found at the camp. Val used this lie against John Rocker, who vowed to protect her to Jeremy when John and Jeremy were both on Exile, that she was going to play 1 idol on herself and 1 on Jacqueline at that second tribal council. Now this seems like an extremely obvious lie to most people, and especially John Rocker, who he himself found that tribal idol at the camp. But this only comes in at 10th place, as Val was somehow able to convince John that she did in fact have 2 idols, and this ironically may have actually caused her downfall in the game. If Val was straight up with John and said she didn't have anything, he may have gone out of his way more to protect her, but due to him believing this outrageous lie, he was comfortable with her receiving votes and eventually she went home. It was a really strange episode, but I think it's this type of overplaying that can really bite you in the end and cost you your spot in the game. So coming in 9th spot, we have Abby Maria and her stating she had an advantage and an idol advantage all within the 1 clue. So the firecracker of Abby Maria makes a list for her lie on Survivor Philippines regarding the advantage she obtained at the auction. Abby spent all $500 on an advantage in the game, and when she got back to camp she was lucky enough to figure out that she was able to skip the first 2 parts at the next immunity challenge, giving her a 1 in 3 chance of winning that particular immunity. But Abby devised a plan to increase this advantage's power by stating the advantage had 2 parts, hinting that the second was a hidden immunity idol clue. Whilst I think Abby was kind of on the right strategic path with this particular play, I think again it was oversold, which gave away the lie to her fellow contestants. Stating when she was reading out the advantage that she didn't have to read the clue and ripping it into a million pieces was the first giveaway, as if she didn't require to read the clue, she just wouldn't have mentioned it in the first place. Again, it was overplayed when she got back to camp, continually talking about how she obtained the idol and that everyone else was in trouble. Some of the best lies in Survivor are the more subtle ones, whilst as mentioned this overplaying can be too obvious and it can show that you're being dishonest. Abby is still one of the best characters this show has ever seen, and I'm sure there'll be more of her in upcoming seasons of Survivor. So coming in 8th position is Gary Hogeboom's lie about his profession. So Gary Hogeboom was a professional NFL player for 11 years prior to playing within Survivor Guatemala, but he entered the game as Gary Hawkins, who had a landscaping business. His original tribe believed this initially, but within a tribal challenge, Danny Boatwright, who was a sportscaster, was able to call him out for being a quarterback in the NFL, and Gary continued to deny this to his tribe mates. As the tribes merged was when this lie really began to fall over more, as he continued to deny this claim when Danny called him out yet again for playing for Central Michigan. Gary replied, "I went to Central Michigan, but I didn't play there." This really raised flags, as it should have amongst his castaways. It really is difficult to get away with being a professional in a widely publicised field, so unfortunately for Gary, the winner of this season was able to have the last laugh. And that leads in perfectly to John Rocker coming in at number 7, aka John Wetland. So similarly to Gary, we have another famous sportsman in John Rocker, who came into the game as John Wetland. So John was a former Major League Baseball player who had a controversial past in the media. So again, it would be extremely hard to get away with being a different person in the game when you were on screens all around the nation. Wes Nail was able to call him out pretty early in the game for being this baseball player, but John stuck to his story as being John Wetland. It wasn't long before he realised he was caught out and had to confess to Wes. After he failed to save Val and her two idols, Jeremy outed him to his whole tribe, which caused chaos in a later immunity challenge. If you're such a big public figure, in Survivor it is probably best to just own up to it, as it will likely come out later in the game, and this will look worse on you than it would have looked if you just owned up in the beginning. Take Mike White, for example, in David vs. Goliath. He was able to play an extremely strong game and even get to the end, being this hugely successful person in the media. So it's disappointing for John and Gary, who tried to put on this alternate persona when really they should have just claimed they were the person that they were. So coming in 6th position, we have Jacob Derwin from Survivor Ghost Island and his fake idol lie. So Jacob's time on Ghost Island was short-lived, but boy oh boy did he feature heavily in the one episode he appeared in. Jacob unfortunately suffered from the classic case of playing too hard too early due to him being such a superfan. He went exploring as soon as he set foot on the beach, and he poured rice into his dirty socks to hunt for an idol. However, his biggest mistake was claiming to obtain an idol from Ghost Island for free after being the first person to visit it. Brendan was able to call him out pretty quickly, stating he didn't bring the paper with him to prove the legitimacy of this idol. I feel like Jacob was somewhat on the right track to a degree in making this fake idol, but hiding it in his pocket so it could have been seen when he came back, and stating that he failed the game or something along those lines may have worked and saved him that one vote. Unfortunately for Jacob, he didn't have the deception skills he thought he once had. So just before we get into our top 5 most obvious lies in Survivor history, just a quick reminder that if you are enjoying this content, to please hit that subscribe button, drop a comment and leave the video a like. It really means a lot and helps the channel grow, and it will enable me to push out more videos, quizzes, discussions and other great Survivor content in the future. So thank you all so much for the support so far, and let's continue with this countdown. So coming in that 5th position is the beloved Noura and her caller role in the challenge in the Island of the Idols. So Noura was a phenomenal character on our streams in her time in the Island of the Idols, however her line capabilities were not as impressive. Noura was able to visit Rob and Sandra on the island and had the chance to win a vote blocker if she could just convince her tribe to make her the caller in an upcoming challenge. Noura jumped at the opportunity quicker than anyone else to obtain an advantage and started explaining it to her tribe mates. She started her speech stating she won an advantage that would benefit not only you but your tribe, and I'm thinking, yes Noura, this is a great way to hide that you are playing for an advantage as well. Unfortunately, the rest of her pitch didn't quite add up and it was really inconsistent, stating that the rest of her tribe had to unanimously agree of the role that Noura played in the following challenge. Tommy quickly jumped in and said, "How can we assign you a role without knowing the challenge?" Noura then went on a little bit of a tangent and tried to backtrack and make things up on the spot to make her lie more believable. The nail in her coffin was when they were trialing the challenge at camp and she ended up failing miserably. This resulted in her tribe unanimously agreeing on her role, but it was her sitting out of the challenge and therefore forfeiting her chance at obtaining the advantage from the island. Whilst Noura was unsuccessful in her attempts to get this advantage, she was still a wonderful person to have on our screens, and it would be great to see her again. So up next, in that 4th position, we have Amanda Kimmel and her lie to Parvati Shallow in Survivor Heroes vs Villains, stating she required to play the idol to stay in the game. So Amanda, who I must say overall is an extremely good player of Survivor, makes this list with this conversation with Parvati after the merge hit in Survivor Heroes vs Villains. Once the merge hit, it was 5 vs 5 between the heroes and villains, so this tribal council was extremely crucial in determining the rest of the game. Parvati and Amanda had a great friendship prior to this season of Survivor, making it all the way to the end together in Survivor Micronesia, and this was a key reason this lie didn't work in Amanda's favour within this season. Amanda told Parvati that if she did have an idol, she better play that thing on herself for her own protection, as the heroes were gunning for her. Now Parvati knew how Amanda lied from being so close to her previously, and she read right through it, being able to pull off one of the best moves in Survivor history, saving both Jerry and Sandra and sending JT home later that night. If Amanda and Parvati didn't have this conversation, I think it would have been much more difficult for Parvati to make this move, and this one tribal really did have such a huge impact on the remainder of the game, with the villains taking it all the way to the end with this numbers advantage. A really difficult lie to pull off by Amanda, and perfectly read and played by Parvati to turn the game on its head. And that leads us to our top 3 most obvious lies in Survivor history. And in third place we have Judd, stating the idol is absolutely on the ground. So Judd was the first person in the history of Survivor to have the clue to the hidden immunity idol, but oh boy did he give away its location in the process. The clue read that the idol was not buried or concealed, nor directly on the ground, indicating it was likely in a tree. Judd was kind enough to share the contents of this clue with his scumbag tribe mates. However, this shared information was just slightly inaccurate. He said the idol was totally on the ground, and you could tell from his body language and the way he was speaking that this information was clearly incorrect. The clear tell was when he was openly looking for the idol. He was looking in all of the trees, which Gary, the non-quarterback, was able to swoop in and save himself later that evening. He later outed Judd when he said he never said one lie during his time in the game, but Judd was such a great character and unfortunately not the best at making believable lies in the game of Survivor. We really do hope to see Judd play again one day. So we're finally at our top 2, and in that second position we do have Ozzy from Survivor South Pacific and Acting for Revenge. So Ozzy to me made one of the most underrated moves ever in Survivor when he deliberately voted himself out when he correctly predicted that there would be one more challenge on Redemption pre-merge to re-enter the game. Unfortunately, his acting chops weren't quite up to scratch when he really overacted at Redemption. He blamed it all on Cochrane for playing the idol and stated his tribe mates likely knew that Cochrane had it. He topped off this performance by stating he wanted to come back for revenge, where Albert and Coach were quickly able to determine that he was lying. If Ozzy played it a little bit more cool and said he was idled out or voted out, but focused his speech on the opportunity to get back in rather than over-dramatizing his hate for his tribe, he may have been able to get away with this lie for a little longer. Overall, I don't think it would have made too much of a difference in the endgame with Cochrane flipping regardless, but it was still a massive performance which was called out immediately, which has to put it in the top 2 worst told lies in Survivor history. So finally, in that number 1 spot, we have So and Joaquin and the neutral box lie in Survivor history. So for me, this has to take out the number 1 worst told lie in Survivor history. So and Joaquin right out of the gates were put in a really unfortunate position of having to make a choice for the tribe to select one of 2 boxes, in honesty to obtain more rice for the tribe, or to deceive to get a smaller bag of rice but also a clue for the idol. Joaquin instantly went to the deceit box and put So and himself in the difficult position of having to make up a lie on the spot to try and convince their newly formed tribe mates of the predicament they were put in by the game. They stated in addition to these 2 boxes, there was also a neutral box which contained the small bag of rice. Now to me, this tops the list for a few reasons. Firstly, as Shirin cleverly mentioned, in Survivor there would never be a neutral box, only honest or deceit. Secondly, after they shared this information, they openly looked for the idol in front of everyone, which ultimately led Mama C getting the clues to get the idol before they had the chance to. And thirdly, even if there was a neutral box, it would be really strange not to tell the tribe that you were picking the honesty one. There were so many more alternatives to this that could have occurred to improve their position if they decided to select deceit. They could have said that there were just 2 boxes. One had a small bag of rice and the other had an immunity idol clue, and they were being honest and picked up the rice. They could have also went along with the lie Joaquin made up to begin with, but in private, So could have told all her tribe mates that he was just being stubborn, and then shared the clue, or even a fake clue, with them to turn them on Joaquin. It was really just a strange lie to come up with, and ultimately cost So her position in the game. I feel like if So were to ever return, she would know not to make this same mistake again, as I feel like she did have some good potential and characteristics for the game. So these are just 10 of the worst told lies in Survivor history. Which of the 10 do you think is the worst? Are there any that I've forgotten about? Please drop a comment down below and let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, remember to hit like and subscribe, as it really means a lot and will enable me to push out more content. This is Analytical Strategy signing out once again, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.